the official gavel, okay. Let's call the meeting of the Planning Commission to order. This is August 22nd. Let's start from the right-hand side this year. Let's have Don Brown do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Understand? Follow me with the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Kaczynski. Commissioner Rulin.
Here.
Commissioner Talley.
Here.
Commissioner Wu.
Here.
Commissioner Blackwell.
Here.
Excuse me, Chair Pro Tem Blackwell.
Here.
Vice Chair Crandall.
Here.
And, excuse me, I did not update my list. I am so
That's all
sorry.
right.
Chair Crandall and Commissioner Brown.
Here. And I'd also like to recognize Eileen White, our recording secretary, Mal Richardson or Richards?
Richardson.
Son. Okay. And Sherry Vander Dusen, our interim city planner.
Thank you.
We have no special orders of business today. We do have some minutes to approve. We have the minutes of the July 18, 2018 meeting. Do we have any comments or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the adjourned regular meeting of the City of San Clemente Planning Commission from July 18, 2018.
Second the motion.
Second by Chair Brown, or Commissioner Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 passes. Oral and written communications. Member of the audience may address the commission on matters of public interest which pertain to the city and are not otherwise on the agenda. If you wish to speak, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and city of residence, and make your presentation. Please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone that wishes to speak? Or do you wish to speak just to the specific item?
Well, about the street.
Okay, that will be coming. The next is the consent calendar. We have no items on the consent calendar. So we will open the public hearing. We have no items under the public hearing, so we will close that and go to new business. And Mr. Franks is going to do the presentation for the city.
Yeah, great. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Tom Frank, and I'm your Transportation Engineering Manager. And tonight, we're going to be reviewing the Camino Mira Costa and Camino Capistrano restriping and adding Class 2 bike lanes. You have a thorough agenda report in front of you, and I've got a more concise presentation to give you with some graphics. And with that, I'll just move into the agenda. I'm going to provide a brief overview of the background and then review the existing road conditions and the proposed alternative lane alignments. We'll review the public feedback received and then the project target schedule, and then receive any public comments in this meeting, and then answer any remaining questions and answers. And then hopefully with that, you can forward a recommendation to City Council to approve some conceptual striping plans. So first off, we are planning, and actually Council awarded a contract to slurry seal Camino Capistrano and Camino Mira Costa this fall. In fact, they approved the contract last council meeting. And we expedited that before we actually had the striping plans approved, because we want to get this done during the warm weather before we get to our winter rainy season, because it's a slurry seal project. So as you've noticed through the years, we've been taking the opportunity as part of our street resurfacing program to implement our general plan, our mobility element of the general plan. And in that, we reference and incorporate the PED bike master plan. And the drawing in front of you, or the schematic in front of you, shows several locations throughout towns. Most of these are major arterials and collector streets throughout town where we've actually implemented either additional Class 2 bike lanes or improved Class 2 bike lanes, usually in the form of a buffered bike lane. The blue lines also show either implemented or considered road diet areas. So you'll see one of our really recent successful road diets was on Camino del Rio. We also did with that project a portion of Camino de los Mares. We're here tonight talking about Mira Costa, and then we're also considering a potential road diet on Camino Veracruz as a part of a traffic calming program request for intersection control along that segment. So just wanted to kind of give you the big picture items or issues. And also, I want you to, with this graphic, recognize that by incorporating these additional Class 2 bike lanes and improved bike lanes, we've really opened up a great biking corridor from the Forester Ranch area and even Talega. I've talked to several people in Talega who actually take the opportunity of the route to go up to Camino del Rio. So they climb up La Pata, they go to Camino del Rio, they go down Camino de los Mares, and then down to Vaquero, which has buffered bike lanes. And they prefer that route because there's a grade separation with I-5. There's basically that overpass there, so they can go underneath I-5 without going through an interchange, and then they can go down to the coastline and then bike up and down the coastal route. So just wanted to highlight that very popular bike route. The bike route is essentially complete with Class 2 bike lanes with the exception of a small segment, and that's the segment on Camino Capistrano between Avenida Vaquero and North El Camino Real. So I wanted to give an overview of kind of the characteristics of roadways, and I know you've heard this before, but I try and open, whenever we're talking about lane changes, lane width changes, or traffic calming, or anything to do with changing the road characteristics, I always start off with, if you can visualize, a wide straight roadway equals a really fast roadway. So think of I-5, think of the Autobahn, think of any roadway like
Tesla max out.
Yep. Tesla, yeah, exactly. You're going 120 plus. Speeds influence the safety and the noise level of the roadway. You design the roadways hopefully for all the users of the roadway. I'm not saying that every street like the I-5 is going to look like a main street, but you look at the characteristics and the needs of each individual roadway and you design accordingly. And then lastly, the road design impacts the surrounding quality of life. So, something to consider. I broke this presentation really into two parts. The first is Camino Mira Costa, and the second obviously would then be Camino Capistrano. So the characteristics of the existing Camino Mira Costa is it's classified as a secondary arterial in the general plan. It currently carries about 8,000 ADT. The posted speed limit is 35 miles per hour, and that was a mistake in my agenda report, so I wanted to note that. It's actually 35 miles per hour. And there's parking lanes on each side along with sidewalks. The adjacent land use is primary residential. We received a petition for traffic calmings, most specifically for pedestrian crossings and a stop sign along Mira Costa, and we did the warrant analysis. Unfortunately, it didn't qualify for traffic calming or the stop signs, but we were interested in receiving the residents' feedback on our upcoming restriping effort as a part of the slurry seal project. So we held a workshop to solicit their input. And before we get into the results of the, well, actually, you already know the results of the workshop because you have it in your agenda report, but before we get into it in this presentation, just wanted to give you a couple of examples of some road diets that have been done around town for the viewers, if there's any out there. And so here's one along Camino del Rio that most people are familiar with. Went from a 5-lane configuration, and when I say that, that's 2 vehicular travel lanes in each direction, with a center turn lane, down to what I call a 3-lane configuration, and that's 1 travel lane in each, 1 vehicular travel lane in each direction with a buffered bike lane, and we kept the same left-hand turn lanes. Others include Camino de los Mares, east of Del Rio. That was a road diet, and actually a little bit west of it towards Camino Veracruz. And then Del Rio, which I mentioned. And here's a dramatic one. And the reason why this buffer is so dramatically wide is twofold. One, we always look at what the needs are for the vehicles. And you, as your traffic engineer, 95% of my day and my focus is focused on how to improve the safety and efficiency for vehicular users, because 98% or more of the use of the roadways is by vehicles. So I always think about what's the most improvement we can do for vehicles on the roadway. But in many cases, there's a lot more width, or roads weren't designed or striped appropriately, or they could be improved. And so when we have that opportunity, it does a couple of things. One is you can improve the conditions for other users like bicyclists or pedestrians, or even in neighborhoods. If you slow things down to an appropriate speed, you may be reducing road noise. But in this case, Avenida Pico was designed as a 6-lane arterial because they thought they're pre-planning a connection with the 241, which isn't going to happen for at least my lifetime, east of Talega. So knowing that roadway is not going to have the traffic volumes for a 6-lane arterial, there's really no need to have 6 lanes striped out there for 4,000 cars a day. It's very sparse traffic out there. So by reducing the travel lanes and eventually going down to 1 lane in each direction, or actually it's 1 lane out and 2 lanes coming towards the west, what that does is it provides, of course, plenty of room for pedestrians and bicyclists towards the right-hand side of the road. But then that buffered area is also an area that we don't have to maintain nearly as much, so it's a more cost-effective approach to maintaining our street infrastructure. So that's why we also do it. So here's the existing striping on Camino Mira Costa, and I know that's a little too far out for you to really see it, but we'll have the opportunity to see it closer in the alternative analysis. Well, and here's the concept striping for alternative A. I thought that might show up a little bit closer than what's shown, but I do have a PDF if we wanted to get into the specifics. And I can kind of, let me just give a description of what you're seeing in front of you and what you have in your agenda reports, because I think it hopefully is a little bit more clear in your agenda reports. But basically at the intersections, when you're on Camino Mira Costa and you're approaching Camino de Estrella, we're going from a road diet configuration to the intersection, and we maintain the existing vehicular travel lane movements at that intersection. So what people normally, some comments that you hear is, oh man, you're doing a road diet, you're taking away a travel lane, you're going to cause congestion on the roadway. And intuitively it might seem like that, but almost, again, 98% of the time the congestion that people experience on the roadway is at intersections. So if you're maintaining the same number of vehicle lanes at the intersections, you're really not going to have an impact on congestion on that roadway. So that's a big issue for road diets. That's something to really consider. So one of the issues that we always contemplate is we don't want to cause congestion. Congestion's not good. We don't want to slow people down or delay them. But in this circumstance, the level of traffic on this roadway, 1 travel lane in each direction is more than adequate to carry 8,000 vehicles a day, or any forecasted number of forecasted traffic, vehicular traffic on that roadway. That coupled with leaving the intersection travel lanes the same, I'm confident there won't be any congestion on that roadway.
On that section, you crosshatched the island.
That's correct.
Is that going to be the whole length of the island, or is this just a vignette?
Yeah, wherever there's an island, we'll crosshatch it. These are conceptual, so that's a good point.
Currently, can you turn left when you come out of the Estrella Shopping Center?
I'll have to probably Google map that. I think you are allowed to do that. And,
are you going to be able to?
That's probably why it's not actually crosshatched.
So you'll still be able to do that at this point?
Yeah, we won't change the turning movements from those.
Yeah, right next to the
So
bank.
it's okay to turn across this island?
Correct.
Okay.
So I retract my comment. It'll remain as shown, and we won't change any of the turning accessibility, or we won't restrict
the
any turning
businesses.
movements from the business, yeah. So, and then once you get away from the intersections, basically the configuration is coming from the inside out. We keep the left-hand turn lanes. They're all 10-foot travel lanes. And then we go to a vehicular travel lane in each direction. And then we have a buffer, and then the bike lane, and then the parking. And so the buffers would be similar to what we have implemented on Ave Vaquero, which allow people to cross over the buffer area and to go park into the parking areas. I listed in the agenda report what the benefits of doing this are, but of course it provides more space for the bicyclists and pedestrians, and provides just more room for even the people who are parking to get out of their car and to move around the vehicle. It also greatly improves the line of sight for vehicles pulling out onto Camino Costa. And we have received complaints over the years about line of sight issues on cars entering Camino Costa. And we're always very sensitive and try and balance the needs of adequate line of sight with the needs of area parking. So that's always a balancing act.
Will the parking area still have enough buffer for door swing between that and the bicycle lanes? Is there some buffer there?
Yeah, we're not striping a buffered area, but we are putting in 8-foot 8-foot parking area. And
Okay.
so typically, we might go down to like a 7 or a 7.5-foot parking area and squeeze them against the curb. But then we also have 8-foot bike lanes, I believe, along there.
Well, I want to make sure
And-
we don't have a conflict between the bike lane and people opening their doors.
Right, it's the
park cars.
the dooring issue, and that's a good point. I think just by having the 8-foot bike lane, the bicyclists inherently will travel away from that door zone and have the room to do it, because an 8-foot bike lane is pretty wide. Plus, then we have a buffer outside of that. So you bring up a good point. Dooring is a very serious issue, and we could stripe it with a buffer. It's just additional paint, and we just
We do
question.
paint
whether-
real well in this town, so, I mean,
We paint a lot, right?
don't be scared of paint.
Yeah, it's a question of, if we want to do it at this point.
Tom, by reducing the travel lane, perhaps the current level of service is A, maybe you dropped it to B, but that's still good enough. Is that the case here?
No, it would remain an A.
It will remain.
Yeah, it won't change the service level.
But the design objective is level C?
I'm sorry, the design of, the
Well,
threshold?
When we design a road, usually we target for level C or B.
See,
I think C
Well, we
is-
target for C and we'll
Right.
allow a D, but yeah, we target for C, yeah. But in San Clemente, we're blessed with a lot of As, so we're in pretty good shape besides that 15 minutes at the start of school. So if you can avoid that 15 minutes, you're doing well. So here's the other areas of Mira Costa, if you have specific questions on particular streets.
one question, I know we're right on the border with Dana Point.
Right.
In fact, I mean, the fact that the city line goes right down to the sidewalk, and they own some streets, and we own, I mean, it's not a usual city line demarcation between cities. I mean, that must have been a land rush war or something like that 50 years ago. Have you coordinated, or you've told Dana Point we're doing this? You coordinated with them at all?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know they just redid Camino Capistrano down there's portions there just recently, and I just want to make sure
Right.
we're all done.
Yeah, they support this, and they also, we're coordinated on Camino Estrella, because that's along in this bid package, and we sent them our plans, and they said they like them so much, they're going to mirror our plans where they can, so it's a smooth transition.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the results of the workshop we held is, we did our noticing, and we emailed out to the HOA, and we tried to, we tried to pull in as much public input as we can. And through that effort, we had 8 attendees of the workshop submit public feedback forms, and all were in favor of the proposed road diet alternative. So after the workshop and before this meeting, we received 4 emails on the subject, and 3 were in favor of the road diet, and 1 was opposed. And that really concludes my presentation on Camino Mira Costa, and then I was going to give the presentation on Camino Capistrano, but if you wanted to break it into 2 for ease of the...
Well, let's have questions on the
Okay.
Mira Costa leg.
Okay.
And we'll open up for questions here. We did receive the letters from the public that were emails, and we have them at the dais, a couple of them. So do we have any specific question in the Mira Costa section of staff? No.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Hey, Tom, thanks for
Okay.
the nice presentation. A few questions. In your presentation, you referenced the recent project at Pico near Pedriza, the east end there. And this commission heard that project, was it about 2 years ago now? A couple
Yeah,
years?
I think so, yeah.
So we've had a lot of time to see how it worked. And there was some public opposition, as I recall, during that time. There was some concern. How has it worked for us? Has there been any complaints? Has there been any problems? Have you seen any issues with that design at all?
I think after about 2 months after it was done, I haven't heard any negative complaints. I've heard a few positives from people who bike ride and who thought it was a good idea. And the director of Public Works liked it because it lowers the long-term maintenance cost for our pavement infrastructure. So I haven't heard really any negative comments from that.
Okay. And there was also some improvement to the center median, some landscape improvement that was done. I don't know if it was an enhancement, or I can't recall if it was brand new landscaping that was installed at the far end. But it sure does look nice. Is there any opportunity to do something like that here, or is the road just not wide enough?
That was an HOA, basically constructed project, and I mean, there's opportunity to construct medians where we don't have turn lanes, but as you know, because you review all my agenda reports, road construction is really expensive, and we'd have to have it as a CIP project.
I see. Okay.
Just in general, like any kind of road reconstruction is right around $40 to $50 a square foot, so it's not cheap.
Okay. And so a couple more questions. It's quite an expanse. It's a long project. And I was looking at the different intersections and the interactions there. I went out there 2 times in my car, and I didn't see a lot of volume or high speeds during my visit, but I did notice people walking, and I noticed some people on their bicycles. And I couldn't help but notice there wasn't a whole lot of crosswalks to get across there. And with the new draw, the shopping center, I thought, gosh, it sure would be nice for folks to be able to have a way to get across to that side without going all the way down to Estrella.
Right.
Is there an opportunity for new crosswalks? when we do this?
That's a great question, and the issues with crosswalks is, I would say that your traffic engineers are very concerned with putting in uncontrolled, or crosswalks at uncontrolled intersections, because people, what happens is they get a false sense of security that when they're crossing, the vehicles are going to stop. And so that's not a good issue to have. So by not having them, the people are actually more cautious. And what you'll probably hear tonight from a resident, because he just told me the story, is there are a lot of pedestrians out there, more than I even, I guess, have seen. But and when they're crossing the roadway, the vehicles are honking or giving them gestures and saying, "You're not supposed to be doing that," and they actually are legally. I mean, we know by vehicle code that they're allowed to cross at any intersection, and it's legal, and the people actually have to yield for them. So it's kind of a catch-22. The crosswalks kind of educate the drivers that they're allowed to cross, which they should be educated anyway, that if you see a pedestrian, give them the right of way. But some, unfortunately, in warm Southern California, people aren't always that friendly. And so the downside is it gives a false sense of security if it's not a controlled intersection, and then if it's a controlled intersection, a couple of things you have to consider is delays for all the vehicles going through there, because there's only really like, that I'm aware of, like 4 types of intersection controls, or really 3. You know, uncontrolled, a stop sign, a signal, or a roundabout. And so, yeah.
Yeah, but the traffic volume didn't warrant
It didn't warrant it from, yeah, we did the analysis and it didn't warrant it.
So we couldn't justify at least one stop sign?
No, you know, we don't like to install unwarranted stop signs for many reasons, but the biggest is actually safety, because drivers won't stop for it. They'll recognize just inherently that people are never there, and they'll just blow through it. That's the biggest issue. The second is it becomes unenforceable if someone challenges it, and it goes to court. And so we want to make sure that, and then the third is equally as important, is if you start putting in unwarranted things and people just start disregarding traffic stop signs and signals and striping, which we put down, then that's really dangerous, because then they don't take anything that we do seriously, and they'll start running signals and everything else.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, thanks. And then my final question at the moment is paint color. We've had at least one project come through, maybe it was last year over in Talega, where we discussed introducing the green
Right.
that the state is using in some areas. And it wasn't a procedure that we had embraced yet for whatever reasons. Where are we now with that?
yeah, we're at the same spot where we haven't embraced the NACTO standard yet, where we're doing the green, basically, especially at the conflict areas, just because our workload's been pretty high lately. So in the interim, because what we do basically is we're implementing what's in the California MUTCD, and right now that's not in the California MUTCD, but it is in NACTO. So if we went through and we presented to you and then City Council a policy or change the ordinance to adopt the NACTO as a design standard, then we could do that, but we just haven't done it yet. In the interim, what we're doing is in the conflict areas, we're putting sharrows. So if you go out to Calle Saluda or even Talega, you'll see in the conflict zones, we're putting sharrows very tightly spaced, so that alerts the drivers that that's bicycle corridor or through
And they're
there.
working well, by the
Thank
way.
you. And I actually received from some bicyclists that they prefer the sharrows better than the green paint for maintenance-wise, but I kind of like the green paint
I
myself.
agree with you about the green paint. I've been
Yeah.
borrowing him for a year, but
So it's still on our list.
Okay.
We just haven't gotten
We'll
there
keep
yet.
asking about it.
Okay, thank you. And
Okay,
I'll keep
Commissioner Talley.
pressuring to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so when was the last traffic study done on this street?
It was a traffic study was done when we did the warrants for the stop signs and the pedestrian crossings, which was 2 years ago.
Okay.
Within 2 years.
Okay, and a speed limit was set accordingly to that?
The speed limit was set according to the last speed survey we did, which was, I think on that street, it was probably about 5 years ago. We're doing a new speed survey update, yeah,
Oh, on this street?
on all streets, yeah, on all
Okay.
of our collectors. We do it every 5 years.
Okay, so will this speed study be done after the road diet if it goes through?
Yes,
Okay.
just thinking of the timing of when it's going to get done. It's going to be close, but
So
it should be in place.
do you anticipate the speed limit being decreased from 35 miles per hour?
No, I'm thinking it's probably going to remain at 35, but the mean speed and the excess speeders should drop slightly. So the speed limit should remain the same, but what you see with the wider roadways is you see the excess speeds really, the high speeds kind of spike. And when you have the road diets, the high speeds statistics drop.
So, on the 300-foot notices that you mailed,
Yeah.
how many were there?
How many were what?
How many were there?
On Mira Costa, I think it was between 400 and 500.
And we had 8 come back?
Right.
So, are we looking for if nobody responded with, hey, let's do this, or 8, that's a statistically insignificant amount.
Yeah.
Are we trying to solve for a problem that nobody in the community, a statistically insignificant amount of the community responded with feedback on?
Well, you bring up a good point about statistically, but my view as your professional traffic engineer is we're actually improving the conditions for all the users by going forward with alternative A, or the alternative concept.
So
It's actually better for the vehicles, and I think it's better for all the users.
And it is implementation of the bicycle master plan and the general plan.
Right, yeah. And
So
we're
do we anticipate that we'll have more bicycle users in the city of San Clemente because we're implementing this?
I would think that the forecasted bike use would go up at least slightly along that roadway, yeah.
No, in the city, though. I mean, is that?
Oh,
gonna
in the
put more-
city?
Yeah.
I would think, yeah, I can't tell you what percentage, but I would think so.
Because I think that is the requirement of the master plan, is that any change that we make increases the amount of bicycle use in the city, or number of bicyclists in the city.
It certainly gives more opportunity for them, and a safer opportunity.
I don't think there's a requirement, but I think Bart's right. By the state law, we provide the opportunity.
How many bicyclists, or how many bicycles currently go down Mira Costa?
Oh, I don't have that count.
Isn't that something that we should probably be looking at when we're weighing reducing lanes for vehicular traffic versus bicycle traffic?
If it was, I guess, a balance between if we were negatively impacting the vehicles along the roadway, I would definitely consider that. There are bicyclists out there. I've witnessed them, but I don't have a count for you, so. I just don't see that, I don't see the downside to vehicular use. In fact, I see the improvement because of line of sight issues.
I'm concerned anytime we take vehicular lanes of traffic out of use for whatever reason, whether it's for road dieting, whether it's for alternative uses or anything. I think that requires should require a very significant showing that that's not going to impact that, and I don't see us stating that 8,000 vehicles that are traveling on that road per day will not be negatively impacted by reducing a lane of travel. If you have somebody that's got a vehicle that is slow, or that's significantly under the speed limit, you don't have an opportunity to get around them and perhaps avoid an unsafe condition because they're going too slow. Maybe that's just me trying to apply common sense to something that doesn't have a common sense application. When this road was built, I assume we had to have a environmental impact review based upon the fact that we were having 4 lanes of travel on that road and what it was doing to the environment. And are we conducting an EIR when we're removing something that was put in place long ago?
Yeah, well, when this was put in place, I believe there was a whole different regional master plan for the arterial road system. So when we're implementing bike lanes, it's actually exempt through CEQA. So we're not doing an EIR on this. Yeah.
Is it exempt from CEQA when you remove traffic lanes, vehicular traffic lanes? Is that exempt from CEQA as well?
I think that's more of a gray matter. I think, actually in our general plan, we don't even have segment analysis. We have intersection analysis, so I don't think that's an issue.
I guess
for general plan.
that's a legal question. If we're removing vehicular lanes, ignoring for a moment the bicycle lanes,
Yeah.
if you're removing vehicular lanes, is that something that requires, is that exempt from CEQA?
Is it on Los Mares?
Sorry, we're not in public.
The
comment.
CEQA exemptions and exceptions are specified in Title 14, and there's a long list of those. I don't know if there are specific exemptions or exceptions for removing lanes. I would doubt it. I would believe they would fall under the catch-all exemption, but I just don't know.
Let me add and wait in on
Okay,
that.
Don.
When we went through the general plan, the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and we folded all that into the general plan, and it was publicly noticed. Then, in fact, we had a program EIR, a complete 989-page environmental impact report in the entire general plan that included the traffic and the entire traffic network, and that was covered and analyzed the entire mobility section of the general plan. And it's available in the environmental impact report. There's several hundred pages that analyze the entire network, part of which we were looking at tonight. So basically, we did review these streets under the program environmental impact report for the Centennial General Plan.
And in that review, we removed 2 vehicular lanes of traffic.
We, in fact, what you're seeing tonight was contained in the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, which was folded into the mobility section of the general plan, which included road diets.
So I'm just saying, on this road, in the general plan.
What I'm telling you is I'm answering your question, saying on this road, in the
Let's do this debate during discussion.
Anyway,
rather
I'm just
than
telling you, I'm
questions for
answering your
the,
question. Okay.
Any more, Jason?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
We love the debate.
I would, sorry, on the
one more.
Veracruz traffic
yes,
road diet,
yes.
I would just reinforce again that you please work with Heidi Harvey, who's the principal at Truman. And
Okay,
the principal at
absolutely,
Rams,
yeah.
Because they're the principal users of that.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
as of, she had not been contacted about anything down there, so it would be, I would urge you to reach out to her.
Well, actually, they were part of the petition, I believe, to get the intersection control evaluation done that we're doing at Costa to move people from the
So
west
just-
side.
just-
Okay, yeah, well, definitely.
I would appreciate it.
Okay, yeah.
Commissioner Wu.
We always coordinate with you.
Tom, you made a comment about the people crossing the road being legal. Correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is for a local street or neighborhood street, people can cross the street anytime and they have the right of way. And the vehicle has to use to them. But on a street like this where you have traffic, you have control the lights on both ends, it becomes a collateral street or arterial street, then you cannot do that. It's considered jaywalking. Right?
No, at intersections, whether they're controlled or not, they're legally able to cross at any intersection per vehicle code.
At
So-
a intersection,
Correct.
even if it's a multiple lane.
Multiple lane, any of the intersections along there, they're legally able to cross, and it's not jaywalking,
Okay.
right?
My question is, can you show me that the implementation map of the master plan again? At the very
Oh,
beginning.
yeah, the one that was showing
With the
the revisions to
color
the,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have a complete bicycle master plan showing the network instead of those color-coded segments?
We do, I could pull it off the internet, but we have a bike and ped master plan.
Or you can just describe to me what are the major bicycle corridors? Is the improvement on the street a part of that network?
The major bicycle corridors are all of the arterials and collector streets basically in town.
Okay. And the restriping we're proposing is a part of that.
It is for bicycle improvements. I don't believe in the bike ped master plan. We said that we were going to do a road diet on Camino Mira Costa, but we look for other opportunities to refine the improvements per the general plan. There are other policies in the general plan as well. And also, I think we're going to cover this in a debate later on. In the general plan effort, the Planning Commission and Council approved the general plan and had the discussion and determined that the segments are not important in traffic congestion issues, and that the more progressive way to look at traffic congestion along roadway corridors is through intersection analysis. So they actually did away with segment capacity restrictions in the general plan.
Okay. So, for example, the city would ask some property owner to build a sidewalk, hoping that eventually the sidewalk becomes a continuous sidewalk.
Right.
Do we have the same approach on bicycle lane? So
Oh,
whenever you
yeah,
see an
right.
opportunity, you just put it there, hoping that eventually it will become a network? Or do you follow a predetermined master plan and try to make that network completed?
We do follow a master plan, but in this case, I know that there is mention of bike lanes on Mira Costa, and we do try and fill in missing segments like we're doing along Camino Capistrano. So, yeah, we are trying to complete a complete bike route through the city, through all of our collectors and arterials.
And does the city have any requirement on what we call complete street? I think we talked about that before.
Right. Well, there's a state law that requires cities to implement complete streets as a part of their planning effort, which we did with the updating our general plan.
Right.
So we're in compliance with that
And
law.
this improvement will certainly make that more in compliance with a complete street.
Yeah, absolutely. It's implementing our general plan.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, a couple things. These two segments are in the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. That it was envisioned that there would be Class 2 bicycle lanes on these two streets. I know specifically, I remember that in the map. We're just combining it with a road diet, which makes it even more compatible. And I'm really like to support Mr. Blackwell on the green striping. And I just sent our traffic engineer a photograph of downtown Vancouver, British Columbia, where they do green striping on the main street of Vancouver with a Class 2 bike road. They just do the conflict zones where there's conflicts. I just took a picture of it and sent it to my favorite traffic engineer from
I've seen it in a lot of cities. I don't need any
and
more
so
pictures.
I think we need to step in that right direction, but
Yeah.
but he is correct also that in the general plan, we did embrace the complete streets. It's very specifically stated as a goal in the mobility and complete streets section of the general plan. And there is a complete chart in the BEP that he's filling in here as we do these road improvements. So that's the only comment I wanted to make.
Okay, very good. And let's keep this section to questions for the applicant, and we can discuss other stuff in our discussion section. Commissioner Talley.
So, I think it's important to understand, I do want bike lanes. Is there a way to put the Class 2 bike lanes here without reducing vehicular lanes?
I don't think we could get the width and maintain the existing parking.
Okay. What are the options to Class 2 bike lanes? And excuse my ignorance on
Yeah,
that
so
subject.
the option would be to do a Sharrow travel lane on the outside where you implement Sharrows, and that's typically recommended on streets 35 or under. So it would classify, it would be applicable on the street, but it's, bicyclists, I think, prefer to have a dedicated space. And this street is probably on the higher side of the 35 mile per hour, 85th percentile.
But we could kind of have our cake and eat it too with that option.
If you prefer to, if you prefer to keep the second travel lane, yeah, you could do that.
Okay. And that would also be consistent with the master plan and providing the bike mobility the mobility plan that we had in the general plan.
I think if that was an alternative that the community supported, it would allow that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Blackwell?
Yes, just a quick question. We have a couple disconnects, one in particular at Avenida La Plata up to Del Rio, and there's a segment that has no apparent project area. There's no color. Why is that?
Right, that was the county project, which the county constructed, so that does have bike lanes on it. I believe they're 8-foot wide bike lanes. So probably when we resurface or seal that portion of the city-owned La Plata that the county built, we probably will implement buffered bike lanes through there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Rulon?
Yeah, am I correct in assuming that that these lanes are designed, that these were some of the lanes that were designed previously that kind of followed more the freeway standard as opposed to the residential standard? Is
The
that
existing, correct, right. There's
So-
12-foot travel lanes.
So those lanes are designed for what, 70 miles an hour, something like that?
Well, I don't think the traffic engineers at the time were hoping that people would go 70 miles an hour on them, But they did adopt a standard travel lane width, which was 12 foot wide. Many cities adopted that, and they really didn't think of the implications of doing that a byproduct of that would be higher speed.
And 12 feet is what we have on the freeways, right?
That's correct, right.
Okay.
And 11 feet actually on the freeways, and we still had 70, 75 mile an hour traffic going through it.
Okay.
When the freeway was under construction, the speeds were still really high, and they actually had to get active enforcement out there to try and drop the freeway speeds.
And
So at
that-
11-foot travel lanes.
That was
people were
11 foot, okay.
Yeah. But normally they are 12 feet, and I can contest through Camp Pendleton, people are moving way beyond 75.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the Camino Capistrano proposed striping
Okay.
before public comment.
Okay, so Camino Capistrano has similar characteristics of Camino Mira Costa regarding its traffic volume. It has actually a little bit higher at 9,000 vehicles per day. It's a secondary arterial. It has parking on both sides. I'm mainly going to focus initially between Ave Vaquero and North El Camino Real. And that's the segment that is along that popular bike route, basically, from down Vaquero, serving the Forester Ranch area, that goes underneath I-5 and then goes to the coastal route. Looking at alternatives, of course, we want to maintain the existing parking, and we always think about the efficiency and safety for the vehicles. And then we also wanted to implement the Class 2 bike lane so that the bicyclists could have a route to the coastline there. So looking at that, the westbound direction, you'll see we keep the two travel lanes. One of the travel lanes is a dedicated right-hand turn travel lane going north. The other is a dedicated left-hand turn going south. We're actually increasing the queuing capacity along that segment from what exists today. So if anything, westbound direction, we're making it better. In order to fit in the bike lanes along that segment, we're proposing to drop the outside travel lane for the eastern or northern traffic, basically going inland. Again, to address the concern about vehicular congestion, hopefully to help with this issue, if you think about it, there's only one travel lane that can turn onto that road segment at any given time. So if you think about the signal operations at the Pacific Coast Highway or North El Camino Real, if you're going northbound and you've got a green and you're making a right-hand turn, that's one travel lane that's making that traffic movement. So it's one travel lane, no matter how full it is. It could be cars going 50 miles an hour, bumper to bumper. It's just going to be one travel lane worth of vehicles going. Then once you get the left-hand turn, the left arrow for southbound traffic, then that's one travel lane. They both don't go at the same time. So with that, besides that, we did a traffic analysis of the intersection at Ave Vaquero, and we didn't change the level of service at that intersection by removing that outside travel lane. So we feel very confident that there's not going to be any traffic congestion or increased, I shouldn't say, there won't be an increased traffic congestion at or at either of these intersections as a result of what we're proposing. So basically, we're proposing three alternatives for you to consider today. The first alternative is adding bike lanes and adding parking east of Ave Vaquero. And hopefully you can see it in your agenda report a little bit better than the audience can see on the screen. But the area between North El Camino Real and Ave Vaquero basically stays the same in all three of these alternatives. The difference in the alternatives 1, 2, and 3 mainly focus between Ave Vaquero and then going up to hill to the residential area.
When you say east of Ave Vaquero, you mean the uphill side?
Yeah, the uphill
Or
side,
north-
exactly, northeast, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So this first alternative adds parking, like 45 parking spaces going up the hill. It also adds a travel lane. And then we changed the configuration slightly for the traffic going down, but we do add a bike lane coming down the hill as well. Here's just a closer up version of alternative 1. And then here's the portion up the hill near Via Breve going to Delgado. So if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them. The second alternative adds a buffered bike lane east of Ave Vaquero. And so we're, basically there's no existing parking going up that segment at this time. So that would leave the no parking, or it wouldn't basically add parking to that segment, and it would allow for a buffered bike lane. But it would drop that second passing lane up that segment. So that's the big consideration there. And then the third alternative adds bike lanes, but also keeps the passing lane going up the hill. And so that's good if you like the passing lane, and as the Commissioner Talley mentioned, if you're really concerned about the slow-moving vehicle going up that segment, then some people would like to have that passing lane. The downside is by having that passing lane, you keep vehicle speeds higher, relatively higher, and you also, it may also impact vehicle noise for the area. And then lastly, if someone is riding a bicycle up that segment, there's going to be a larger differential speed and less space between the bicyclist and the vehicle for that segment. So those are the trade-offs.
Does that include electric bicycles too that are moving at 30 miles an hour?
Well, less, because obviously the faster they can go, the the less differential. Yeah, they move.
The bikes I see in town now are electrics. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. So
okay.
that lessens the differential. So I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding dimensions. I did want to point out that in alternative 2, when you go between intersections of, let me get the intersections right, Monte Vista, when you're approaching Monte Vista to La Breve, we actually refined that, and in this description, or in this presentation, you'll see the revised concept, but basically it mirrors what's shown in alternative 1. And the why we did that is because by implementing what's shown in alternative 1 along that segment, we actually are able to create a bike space for the bicyclist to get up the remaining portion of the hill. What was shown in your packet is it just showed it merging and being a share-out condition, still going up the hill. And we actually have the space to do what was shown in alternative 1. So we figured it was more practical, or it was just more feasible or better designed to do what was shown in alternative 1 for that small portion.
Where's that small portion again?
It's between Monte, it's on the approach between Monte Vista. So about that first drive, I'd say 250 feet southwest of Monte Vista up to the border with
So you're saying
All the way to Delgado?
Yeah, to Delgado.
Okay, Jim Rowland, do you have a?
sorry.
No, you have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I'm clear. So that approach to Monte Vista for alternative 2 is now the same as the approach to Monte Vista that you have listed for alternative 1?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. You done with your presentation on that?
Almost.
Okay, let's finish it and then we'll take questions.
Okay, so we held a public workshop recently on the topic, and we had 6 public feedback forms received. 2 supported alternative 1, 3 supported alternative 2, and 1 supported alternative 3. We sent out the notices for this meeting and emailed the HOA and interested parties. And we noticed it both for this meeting and for the City Council meeting for September 4th. And we received 1 additional email supporting alternative 2. And as mentioned in the agenda report, staff is recommending alternative 2 because it best serves all the users' needs, and it also doesn't implement parking, considering that the community is used to not having parking in there, and there is likely a reason why there's no parking along that segment, because at one time there was, and now there's not, so that's why we're following the input from the community and keeping things as close to current conditions as they can while implementing the bike lanes.
Okay. We will have some questions for you. I've got a quick question on, when we put, particularly on the first section, when we put a bicycle lane outside of parking towards the center of the road, can you park closer then to the intersection?
We're not changing parking.
Well, no, this is on Mira Costa. At any of the intersections, we've got,
On
you
Mira
stop the
Costa,
double
yeah.
line for the parking, or the line for parking on one leg here, going into Paseo Flamenco.
Let me get back to there.
Sorry about backing you up
Okay,
here.
so, Flamenco, okay, I think it's the
Okay.
next one. It's the next.
On the bottom
Yeah.
one, you can see where we're taking the curve, going to the left. The parking lane is, the stripe stops.
We're,
Or is that
I'm
just a
not-
drafting error? If you
I'm
look
not
at
clear
the,
on- There's no parking here on the approach for line of sight issues, but we're not changing any of the existing
oh,
parking.
has the line of sight changed? Because now they've got an additional bike lane to
Right, the
pull
line-
out
the
of the
line of sight has
intersection and look
changed,
both
right.
ways.
The line of sight has changed. At this point, we're not proposing to decrease the no parking zones, but it's something we can look at. If
Okay,
requested
so it's
by
an
the
option that
community,
can
it's-
happen in the future.
It's an option, yeah. If
Okay. Let's start from this end and have Commissioner Wu.
Hey, Tom, can you talk about the parking demand around this area?
It's high.
Huh?
It's high.
It's high.
Yeah.
Do we need more parking here?
Depends who you ask, but likely they'd say yes, I would guess, or a lot of people would. It's always a balance, so. So without doing a thorough analysis, I wouldn't recommend any change in no parking restrictions at this point.
Do we expect more people to use the Poche Beach?
I can't answer that question.
We don't have any study around that for the parking demand.
Well, no, I can't really answer that question. What I've heard is that, that the parking meters that exist today, that they're not highly used, and it's almost a question of whether the city's getting enough revenue to maintain them, or if they should just be removed. So I don't think there's a super high demand at Poche Beach, but I thought you were referencing Mira Costa. I think at Mira Costa, it's a higher use, or it's a higher density housing along that area, and I think it is highly used.
And I'm talking about Camino Capistrano and
Yeah.
Pacific Coast.
Oh, that's really used.
Yeah, there's a lot of, there's a,
Huh? Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, right, the DMV, yeah.
well, there's a lot of.
I'm not sure if it's used
there's
for
a lot
the
of
beach,
traffic-
but.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
parking demand from DMV that's, was a contentious issue at council last night, as a matter of fact.
Right, I've heard there's, yeah.
I went there last week, that was a nightmare.
Yeah,
You deserve it.
okay. Yeah, I live in Shorecliff, and the DMV parking has gone all the way up. That's why we red striped
Right.
an intersection a couple of meetings ago, and including when the school lets in and out, when Shorecliff lets in and out, it's just absolutely packed down there, absolutely packed. So, let's see, Commissioner Blackwell?
I have a follow-up question. You also mentioned that those parallel parking are 20 feet long.
That was our assumed length for the,
20 feet for parallel parking is pretty short. I mean, many people may have some difficulty parking. I think the standard is about maybe 22, or could be even a little more.
18 and 20 or something.
yeah, we actually have 20-foot with a 2-foot buffer, so you're right, our standard is 22, but actually the industry standard's 20, and now there's a lot of shorter vehicles coming out, so 20 seems fairly appropriate for the industry standard.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Blackwell, we'll try again.
Thank you. Tom, I think you answered my question, but I'll just, for clarification's sake, no meters proposed at the Camino Capistrano?
Not at this time. If we went with that alternative, it's something that would probably be considered.
So one of the, was it alternative one that had 45 potential parking spaces?
Correct.
So 45 meters, or half that with two-sided.
It would be studied likely.
Okay, okay. But there was no discussion about it in the report?
No discussion.
What are your thoughts on that at this point?
I think that's above my level. It's something we'd study, and maybe I'd be a part of the study, but it's really, you know, we'd look at the demand and other issues and cost of maintaining the meters,
Okay.
so.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Talley.
So that makes sense about the first segment from Camino Capistrano, or from PCH up to Vaquero, right? Can only be pulling one car at a time, so
Right.
it doesn't matter if you have 6 lanes or 1 lane, still only 1 car turning right. But I was struck by the 9,000 vehicles that are traveling on that during a day. Can you give me some basis for what that means in comparison to other places in town?
Sure.
I mean, what do we see on Pico and Veracruz, per se?
Yeah, Pico and Veracruz, I think out there it's about 40,000 cars per
Okay.
day. So a similar traffic count for, 8 to 9,000 is, well, actually Vaquero went down, so they're lower. They're like 6,000, 7,000. Presidio, that's probably about the
wait a
same
minute,
traffic
Vaquero
level.
went down. It went down from where it was prior to the road diet and the Class 2 bike lanes?
No, it wasn't in relation to that. I think it had to do with the construction of the interchange at Avenida Vista Hermosa. I think people changed their driving patterns,
Okay.
so it went down a few thousand from what it was prior to that.
So that does bring up an interesting point. Where we've done road diets in the past, have we seen vehicular traffic increase or decrease?
No, but no, we haven't.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, let's close the presentation, open it to the public, for public comment. We have some cards, and first to speak, try to keep your comments to 3 minutes if possible. We have Marie Frank Smith.
Okay, my main concern is trying to cross the street. That's simple. I feel that everybody is really going way too fast. I don't see any vehicle working with 35 miles per hour at all. And it's just uneven for all. Our neighborhood has a lot of older people to it, and it's hard for them to try to cross the street at any time because nobody wants to stop. They maintain the same speed, even though they know that maybe somebody is just about to complete their crossing. So I found that place, there's no way for pedestrians to feel secure, totally secure. You just have to take a big leap and make sure you look right and you look left, and voila. Right. That would be one of my concerns.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Pat Wiggins?
First, I wanted to say that I live in Short.
Microphone down, so.
Oh, I live in Shorecliff, and I know the notice went out to the property management, but only 5 people know. The other 94 have no idea because no petition, no flyer, nothing. So it's kind of a surprise. So I'm on the board there. So I kind of went around the neighborhood and asked, have you seen a petition? Have you heard about it? Did you talk to anybody? And nobody. I mean, it's just like I said, there's a meeting tonight. And so I'm a little concerned about that we have a petition that's been signed by nobody where I live. And we don't have a lot of bikers, I can tell you this. I live across the street from where that retirement place is, those houses, I don't know what it's called. But anyway, I mean, the biking is not going to increase. My second concern is where I live, there's a blind curve, and nobody ever rides their bike up that hill. They walk because it's so steep. You never see a rider. So, you know, they can have a walking lane to get up there. But I'm also concerned about that curve when they come around. I mean, I don't know, there has to be another plan in there outside of just taking a bike and hoping for the best. Because, and going downhill, I mean, everybody likes to go downhill, but you're going really fast. And that's what I wanted to talk about, and hopefully there could be a little more discussion on this before a decision's made and before they start it. You know, I know it's scheduled to start really soon, but I think that we haven't done all our due diligence on this.
Certainly. We have one question for you from Lake.
You're on the board at Short Cliffs. What's the view that you heard from the residents that you spoke with about reducing the lanes? Are they for or against reducing the vehicular lanes there?
Well, they couldn't give me an opinion because they haven't heard. So I was hoping that maybe something could be sent to the homeowners, you know, and not just the board, because people just don't come to the board meeting. I mean, maybe we have 3-4 people. But, I mean, you know how that goes.
I was on the board for a long time. You're doing better than I ever did.
So, you know, I'm concerned about all these other people, the 94, that don't have a clue.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And I think the distance is 300 feet from the project, so those would be the only people that would be notified, and I'm pretty sure those were notified. Yeah, Ms. Franks, would you answer that for
Those were
her?
notified, plus we emailed the HOA boards in the area and interested parties. So anyone that had contacted us regarding the street segment.
Okay, very good. Cheryl Kelly.
Hi. Yeah, I'm president of the Short Cliff Villas HOA. Pat and I are on that same board. And we were unaware of this until I got the notice for the community meeting, and I showed up, and I was one of the 6 people that submitted an opinion on the matter. My only concern is, like Pat said, there's 5 of us on the board, and 94 other homeowners are totally in the dark about this whole thing. People I have talked to are really not excited about losing a traffic lane. But then again, they're hearing it from me. I might have a little bias. So just putting it out there.
No, very good, thank you. Brenda Miller. And for those who have not been on the dais for long, Brenda Miller was probably the main public advocate for the bicycle master plan and is extremely knowledgeable. And so she will overwhelm you with facts and
Hopefully
details.
not. I'll keep the geek language under control. For those of you that I haven't met yet, so pleased to meet all of you. The short answer is that alternative 2 is the best answer. And it is because of the presence of the buffers. If I can just address, can we have some graphics up there? Can we put the graphics back?
Yeah, sure. Which one?
We can start with alternative 3, and I can tell you what's wrong with alternative 3. So alternative 3 is the one, well, gosh, why does it not look what I like, what I have?
I think we're focusing on his recommendation is
Should we-
alternate
number 2?
2. So save your time and
Okay, all right.
address what can be improved, or you like an alternative 2.
It's a problem when you translate from digital to paper, your brain doesn't work. Okay, so the real benefit of our alternative 2 is you have those beautiful wide buffers, and they do 2 things. They allow more room between a bicyclist and a motorist, but they also, importantly, buy reaction time. If there is an encroachment, if somebody is texting, if somebody is suddenly alerted with something on their phone, distraction in the car, whatever it happens to be, and they suddenly realize they're not on course, they can make a quick correction without killing somebody. It's time. And so that's very, very important. I also like the fact that in alternative 2, you have the buffers going in both directions. That's very important. By contrast, if you were to have that uphill passing lane, that's very similar to what we have presently at the intersection of Avenida Estacion going northbound on North El Camino Real, where once you leave Avenida Pico, you've made a right turn, you're at the stoplight at Estacion. The cars gun it and compete with each other to jockey for position as the other side of the intersection narrows to one lane. Every one of those cars in the rightmost lane uses the bicycle lane as a passing lane. So it's very dangerous, and it's far from ideal. Overall, I love the buffers, and if I understand, Tom, the correction from the packet was that you took the alternative 1 and put that into the alternative 2 for the merging up there at Monte Vista? Is that what you said?
That's correct.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea as well. So, in general, I would like to see sharrows down in the downhill portion from Monte Vista going westbound, primarily because if you are a vehicular cyclist who follows the rules of the road and is comfortable in the roadway, if you are bombing down that hill at 40 to 45 miles an hour, which we will be for those of us who are strong, confident cyclists, you do not want to be trapped against the curb where there may be more road debris. It's more of a blind curve coming to the right, and with that driveway entering the little commercial center there at Vaquero and the right turn, that could be a surprise. So those of us who are vehicular cyclists and well-educated ones, we will take the center of the vehicle travel lane all the way down to PCH because that's where you're safest. And if we could get sharrows in that lane, it would notify everyone to expect bicyclists to be there. But overall, thank you once again. You guys are doing a great job, and our engineers are the best in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. Steve Smith.
Hello, thank you. I live on the corner of Flamenco and Camino Costa. So every day I see cars coming both directions. Earlier this year, they actually put a speed monitoring device right in front of my house to monitor the speed on Camino Costa. Numerous cars go over 60 miles an hour down that hill. That is fast. So no matter how you look left or right to try to cross that street, there are people on you in no time. So I just moved from Forester Ranch where they did Camino del Rio and Los Mares, and they did they took away lanes. Nobody got upset about it, and the traffic moved just fine, but it will move slower. And it made it so much easier to cross anywhere along Del Rio or Estrella. So I'm hoping that you guys will take this, that street, Mira Costa, after 5 p.m., there are cars parked from the very top of Estrella all the way down past the curve. The parking is full on both sides. If you come out between a car and there's 2 lanes of traffic, you have about this much room before somebody almost kills you. And this could happen to anybody. And don't forget, there are school kids going every day down that street back and forth to school on their bicycles. I see those every day. And so they have to ride on the sidewalk, but the danger of riding on a sidewalk is every time they come to an intersection, they have to go on the road. So people in cars aren't looking for people on bikes crossing streets, and so that's always a problem. If you're on a bicycle and you're in a bike lane, people see you and they pay attention. So it's not ideal for bikes to ride on a sidewalk. And I don't think there should be a problem with 1 lane in each direction. If the coast highway can handle 1 lane in each direction, I don't think there'll be a problem on Mira Costa, which is a way smaller street. That's my view.
Thank you very much. Dan, and could you help me with your name?
Ignosi.
Ignosi.
Yeah. Hi, good evening. Thank you for your time. Appreciate you guys all volunteering. I know it's a thankless job. And I also want to thank Tom and Brenda. I live on Delgado Road, which is right above, actually, we're in both areas. We catch the Mira Costa, going to the donut shop up there, Kelly's Donuts. I'm a father. I've got a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old. And one of the things that I gained as a family was the ability to ride with my kids when the El Camino Real was enhanced, going, I guess it would be north and south on PCH El Camino Real, and you guys made a sizable change down there. And I know it's really easy to look at, well, the numbers aren't real good right now. Well, the numbers aren't good because it's crazy dangerous out there. I don't want to take my kids and get on a bike and ride in these places. And so I'll move on from that to on Mira Costa and on Camino Capistrano going south. Extremely high speeds. It's definitely family and bicycle unfriendly. I totally agree that there are straightaways that are people are going high speeds as a driver of vehicles as well as a bike rider. I won't take my kids that way, and it makes it really difficult to exercise with your kids when you can't get on a bike and safely navigate the streets of San Clemente. I think one of the things that I kind of put down in my notes here is that the statistics show that riding on the sidewalk, that's what people normally defer to is, well, ride on the sidewalk. Well, the statistics say that it's less safe on the sidewalk than it is in the bike lanes. So I plead with you guys to take Tom's recommendations to heart. There are people out there that want to ride our streets with their families and their 13 and 11-year-olds. We definitely need a buffer. As a person who's ridden up that hill from I guess it'd be from El Camino Real coming up north, because I live on Delgado Road. Again, where that hill tapers at the, I think it's Short Cliffs Villas, it tapers, I'm going 6 miles an hour. And cars are going 60 miles an hour going up that hill. And they've done a lot of speed checks right at where Delgado Road is, because they're flying through there at that point in time. So anything that can be done to provide the opportunity for reduced speeds and then for bicycle safety. And I just go back to the fact that please don't look at the fact that some of these roads aren't being used currently, because they're not being used because we won't take our families out there. It's nuts. And we all want to go home and spend the evening with their families. I'll gladly take any questions you guys have as far as being a resident there and both riding and driving, if you have any.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, let's close the public comment and open it for discussion. Would somebody like to start? We have the fastest hand in the West there. Commissioner Talley?
So, Tom, I wanted to follow up on a question that I think I'm now confused on from Commissioner Wu earlier. Can you only cross at the intersections on these streets on like Mira Costa legally, or can you cross at any point on the street legally if you're a pedestrian?
No, at intersections.
Okay, so.
And when I mean intersections, it's not a controlled intersections, like I can, at any of the side streets,
Okay,
that's considered
But jumping out, coming out between a car, if you're, that's what I always thought was kind of jaywalking, I guess, to use that
Right.
term. You have to go to an intersection.
Correct.
Okay. Has there been any request for enforcement on the speed up there? Because I think I've heard you say
On every
before-
street.
Okay.
That's
Because as you
uniform.
said, I think you've said before, somebody giving tickets is the way you reduce speed, right?
You do, but as you've heard before, it's only effective when the police officer is present, and so, yeah, it's just, and then within, even if you're actively enforcing over a period of time, that's how you can change behavior. But then as soon as the active enforcement is removed, old habits resume within 3 weeks.
And I don't know the answer to this. I was just thinking about this as I was hearing the speaker talk, one of the speakers talk about riding their bike 45 miles an hour down the hill. Do bicyclists need to comply with posted speed limits?
They do.
Okay, so that's a 35-mile-per-hour speed zone, correct?
Going down, I believe it is, so they could get a
So
ticket,
they
like
need to
a
slow
lot
down.
of, they follow the same rules of the road as vehicles.
Okay. So, I mean, I think that's, they shouldn't be going faster than the cars that are going down the street. They should be going the speed limit. Okay. So we're in discussion.
We are in discussion.
So I have very big concerns about whether this is categorically exempt from CEQA. I know the city of Los Angeles recently got served with several lawsuits over road diets that they were doing. And one of the allegations is that they were not categorically exempt from CEQA, and they needed to conduct the necessary environmental reviews before they altered the road dynamics. And I'd hate to see the city by itself a lawsuit because we didn't get at least a determination and it was categorically exempt. And I'd be happy with something from council, at least to assuage my fears of that, but it doesn't appear like we've run those traps. Adding a bicycle lane is categorically exempt, but not the road diet in conjunction with that. And I'm concerned with the fact that we have a community with 94 residents that haven't had a chance to voice their opinions, pros or cons on the road diets that we're talking about here. I think we can all agree that bicycle lanes in one form or fashion make a lot of sense on these roads, and we have multiple options that are available to us. But I think that we've got. I have a lack of belief that we have reached the best possible decision on how to do that right now and forward a recommendation to council. I think we're exposing ourselves to some legal liability, and I don't think we're taking into account some of the views of some of the residents that may be part of those 8,000 or 9,000 cars a day that are going up and down. So I can't support the, I can support bicycle lanes, but I can't support the proposals that are here that remove a lane of vehicular traffic today without more information.
Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, I'll take the opposing view. And because through the development of the general plan, we know that we went with intersection capability analysis. In other words, we know it's more cost-effective to control our intersections rather than the entire road length, and therefore you can put road diet in place and still not affect the road capacity. And we had a huge technical volume that supported that whole chapter of the general plan, which probably you should somehow get him a copy of it.
Yeah, I can forward you a link.
And it was about this thick, we did analysis of 57 or 58 intersections, and in conjunction with the entire general plan, a technical analysis, using intersection control measures so that we can road diet and still maintain throughput it's cost effective to change or affect change at intersections, so you can road diet in between to maintain speed. And that's totally an acceptable engineering way of building roads, and it's done through the state law. So I think your concern about CEQA is probably maybe a concern bridge too far, but you're the lawyer and I'm not. But I'm supportive of both these configurations. I would really like to have that parking down at the bottom of the hill, but because I know DMV is impacted. There was people at council last night concerned about halt parking in the entire area down there. But I went up and down that that road climb maybe 3 times today, and I just that many parking spots on that one, particularly on the right-hand side going up as it next down. It seemed like a parking spot too far. I agree the ones that are metered down there are unused, and everybody else is going off up by DMV and up into the Short Cliff neighborhoods to park. I think these road configurations were discussed when we did the bicycle master plan. It's consistent, and we're executing the plan. And so I would be supportive of both Mira Costa and option 2 as slightly changed here as presented tonight, because I think it's a viable and more safer way to connect our last bicycles, particularly down at the bottom of the hill. We've always had noticing issues on every one of these traffic issues. And we go beyond the state law in noticing when we send notices to the HOA. And we did that, we learned that the hard way 6 or 7 or 8 years ago. on some other areas like Frontera and other areas. And so we inform the HOAs, and routinely, the HOAs, it gets lost in the manager's in-basket or whatever. However, we're going to the HOA, which in this case is probably beyond the 300-foot world, trying to, expecting them and their management and board to pass the word. And this just consistently has not had an effect, and we do get some people tonight, and I'm glad somebody did. That was the intent of why we do mail it to you, that you do pass the word to the 94 and do discuss it, is the intent, the city's intent of going beyond the state law requirement for noticing. So we've tried our best here. When we started talking zoning on SB2, we put out 4,500 notices. And so we certainly, the mailing bill for the city is pretty incredible. So I think we've done the best effort to inform this, and it's not uncommon for this gentleman to stay late at night for a neighborhood outreach meeting that's noticed and get 5 or 8 or 10 or 12 people. I know for a lot of traffic calming and down in my area, he sent out 2,100 notices. For
1,400?
1,400.
Yeah.
For some traffic calming on some areas down, and got 20 or 30 people up here. And so we certainly try. So I think we've tried our best at noticing. This is within engineering standards. It's within the plan. And as a fellow pilot, you fly the plan. You plan the flight. You fly the plan. And so I'm supportive of the staff recommendations for both of them.
Okay, Commissioner Ruhlman.
Thank you. It's probably worth just reviewing that our bike and ped master plan is actually part of our general plan, right? So this being part of that, I think we kind of have a predilection to fulfill the general plan. So if this fulfills it, that's a good thing. That's a point in its favor. And we did an environmental impact report for the general plan, knowing that this was putting bikes in here is going to be part of that. So, there is that, and there's also, as Commissioner Brown mentioned, we judge these things based on their intersections as opposed to roadway segments. It's a better way to do that. So I'm not sure about if we need a CEQA here. It doesn't. I don't think we've done it, but I suppose there's nothing wrong with wearing both belts and suspenders. If we maybe you'd be more comfortable on an approval if we also ask staff at the same time to just go out and check that, just assure that, report to City Council whether or not a CEQA is required for something like this.
Yeah, we can address that in the agenda report, but we always conform with CEQA on every project. So, yeah, we go through the checklist. We always conform with CEQA.
Yeah. So, and I think what we've seen in the past too, with the lane widths and how these streets were originally designed, they're just kind of, they're given too much bandwidth, too much capacity for what they are. I think too, it's good to keep in mind for streets like this is that they're not as important as the residents are, because they're the eyes on the street there. But it's also not just a residential street, it's a secondary arterial. So this is used by, everyone in town. And I think one of the reasons we don't see bikes on a street like this is because the bicyclists are smart. They know where the tough spots are, they know where the dangerous spots are, so that's where they're riding their bikes. They're going down, they're going down Vista Hermosa, for instance, instead of this street, even though it would be better, more convenient for them to go down here, just because they know it's a little scary and they want to avoid that. I've done that as a bicyclist myself. So I think the fact that we don't see too many bicycles here, except for people going to school, which is most critical, isn't necessarily a reason not to put in bike lanes. I think it's more like build it and they will come for some of these things, especially for these kind of more arterial roads. I like the fact that it's lower maintenance. That's always a good thing. I like the fact that we, as we should for multimodal, is that we treat all modes of transportation the same. That was a big discussion we had during the general plan. So we're making sure that we take care of bikes as well as cars. This is, paint, and I assume that we might do this in the way that we can scrape this off pretty easy, so I don't think that there would be a problem, but if there is, it's a paint job, it's not a roadway, re-engineering the roadway or anything like that, so we've got that going for us as well. I've always liked the idea of the green paint, but I'm usually going to lean towards what the traffic engineer says, but I assume that we can put the green paint on later if we
can, yeah.
Say, if that's a way to follow that, so, much as I'd love to see that myself. What do you think about the Sharrows going downhill towards PCH, as Brenda
I think
mentioned?
it's something to consider. I don't see the downside at this point, but.
Okay,
Well,
I would tend to want to
considering-
bring that in because she makes some good points about what those bicyclists are encountering as they're.
Right, yeah, and it's good to educate the drivers as well, as she mentioned. And Brendan knows this, but vehicular bicyclists have the right to travel into that vehicle lane if they feel like that's a safer place to be, even with the bike lane, or if they have issues riding in the bike lane, like she mentioned. But it does help educate the drivers that they have the right to be there as well.
Okay. So bottom line is, I'm happy with alternative 2. I'm happy with, the recommendations that staff has made. I think that we should maybe ask staff to consider Sharrows in that one area. And I think that, Jason, if you'd be more comfortable with approving it, with asking staff to assure that we don't have to do CEQA, or if we do, to include that to City Council in the staff report, that might help. If it helps with your support, I'd certainly be happy with that.
Commissioner Wu.
Thank you. In general, I concur with Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Rulli about the support of these 2 projects. With some additional comments on the first one, Mira Costa, I'd like to point out when pedestrians cross the street, rather than currently you have 2 travel lanes on each direction plus the turning lane in the middle, so you have about 50 feet distance to cross. Once we reconfigure it, you only need to cross, not counting the bicycle. You can still get hit by the bicycle, but it's safe. It's better than being hit by a car. So you have 2 travel lanes to cross plus the center median. So you have shorter distance to cross, which I think make pedestrian crossing a little better. So for that matter, I support the Camino Mira Costa restriping. On the Camino Capistrano, I like alternative 2, but I'm really interested in alternative 1 because that give us many more parking. I think without a parking study, it's hard to tell. But I'd like to recommend the City Council to take a look at that. Maybe we should add some parking there, install parking meters for the intersection at Camino Capistrano and Ave Vaquero. I see that when vehicles going downhill, there's a dedicated right turn lane into a small pocket of development. I'm not sure we really need that dedicated right turn lane because you can combine that with the 5-foot bicycle lane and then save some real estate and put it on the other side and make the bicycle lane a little wider to make the bicyclists going uphill, give them a little more room. I'm not sure.
Yeah, the thought behind that, that dedicated right-hand turn going into that small little commercial business was that we were thinking, and we're thinking along your lines to have that as a typical intersection approach with a dash line that could be shared by bicyclists or right-hand turn vehicles.
Right.
What we were nervous about is that that people would continue through the intersection, and then they would see those bike lane and the parking area as an additional travel lane. And so that's why we wanted to keep that existing configuration similar to the way it was, just because of driver behavior. We were afraid if we changed it and we made a dash, people might consider that an additional travel lane and then have 2 lanes of travel, vehicular traffic going from Avenida Vaquero to North El Camino Real. So that's why we did it. And as seen, we still have a bike lane with the parking, but as you mentioned, if we did it the other way, we might have a little wider bike lane.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why we did it.
I think it's worth being studied to see if we need those or if we prefer to have those additional parking spaces. If the city wants them, I'd prefer alternative one.
Okay, I'm going to say this is going to be renoticed again for city council meeting, correct? No?
No, it's not.
Okay, so we can't
And we did
solve the
that as a-
noticing issues between now and then without it coming back here, is that correct?
They just noticed for both.
We noticed for both. We put
noticed for
on the
both.
notice, yeah, for
Okay.
planning commission and.
I was wondering if it
for-
was different since it's not being appealed up, it's automatically going up, okay.
Correct.
Very good. On the Mira Costa section, I see that it's a very good improvement for pedestrians, especially going over to the park. I drive this absolutely every day, and the traffic is not that intense. And the need for 2 lanes, I've never had a problem coming to the intersection and being more than 3 cars behind when the light changes. So I see a lot of advantages to that. As far as CEQA, I think we need to make sure we put in a recommendation that be resolved prior to it going to city council. That would be a recommendation I think we would have to do on our vote. As far as the El Camino, Camino Capistrano section down at the bottom in Vaquero, I have to agree that right now cars race up that hill to try to get the lead. And they continue up that once they get into that lane and go by the church a lot faster than what they should have because they basically didn't want to slow down until the stop sign. So I don't mind losing that, the 2 lanes going up the hill. I think that's a big improvement. So if we make sure that CEQA is taken care of, I'm comfortable with 2. I think we're actually going to pick up some parking once we look at the line of sight issues on coming out of some of these little perpendicular streets on particularly Mira Costa. But I am thinking with those caveats, we can move it along to Planning Commission, City Council. The Sharrows going down, I saw in San Luis Obispo, they used them just last month. Theirs, I believe, are green, and I think they warned me very clearly that these were shared roadways and to look out for the bicyclists, and I was more aware because of it, so I'm a supporter of that. Okay, Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about this CEQA issue. We've been doing these road analysis or I have now for over 8 years. So I think it's all involved. I think my lawyer friend here, he has his concerns, but I would like, we ought to have a policy statement out of the city attorney's office that settles this once and for all going forward. It's not just a recommendation on this issue to council, it's whether we are CEQA exempt by the process of doing the road thing. And so I would recommend that we further embellish this thing going forward and say, let's get a policy statement, a reading heading check from the city attorney, assistant city attorney, in writing that says, yea, vary, do the process, due to the manual of uniform control devices, our bicycle master, all the stuff we use to get to this that it's okay, and that we don't have to worry about CEQA for a road diet.
Very good recommendation.
So I think I would request that we make that some requirement in writing for the city attorney.
Okay.
And as far as green stripes, get the green paint out, and let's get on with it.
What's green paint?
Okay, Commissioner Talley.
If nothing else comes out of tonight, it's green paint, okay? So I agree with Commissioner Brown. I think one policy statement from the city attorney would be sufficient just to put it to rest, so we've crossed our Ts and dotted our Is. I'd like to request that when this comes to a vote, that the chair consider breaking it up into three segments. The first being the Mira Costa restriping. The second.
I think we can do that since there's not a.
Well, the second being Camino Capistrano from PCH to Ave Vaquero. And then from Ave Vaquero east on Camino Capistrano. The other thing that I was just reminded by Commissioner Ruland's statement on multimodal transportation, and that all are to be treated equal, is that we're talking very heavily here about vehicles, bicycles, but I feel like we're not giving the pedestrians a fair shake, especially on the Camino Capistrano east of Vaquero. And I think that the discussion of option number one, which provides for parking to encourage pedestrian use of those spaces, that is true that it really is in the spirit of the I think the general plan and what we should be looking at. If we're taking away lanes of vehicular traffic, maybe we should be doing something for pedestrians and the ability to park on the street and then to enjoy the facilities, from a walking standpoint there. So I could support option one that adds the parking spaces, and having just dealt with the DMV last week and parking in Short Cliffs and then walking down, that might help out with that. And 20 feet's more than long enough for parallel parking. Come on, that's what they do at the DMV. I saw them out there trying to do it, and half the kids weren't making it.
Technically, can these two segments be broken apart and without affecting each other?
In your motion, you're making a recommendation to City Council. I have something to add regarding, getting a written policy from the City Attorney's Office on this issue. So remember, we have a contract let to a contractor to resurface the project. So we have a schedule that's moving. Additionally, with our agenda report, that gets reviewed by the city attorney. All of our agenda reports get reviewed by the city attorney. What I'd suggest is and what we'll do, is we'll include a paragraph addressing how we're complying with CEQA on this item. And the city attorney will review that, and they approve our agenda reports. So that's how I'd suggest moving forward. I just don't want to, put a recommendation in there where we're asking the city manager to give a work product to the city attorney in such a short time frame. I've got to get my agenda report done tomorrow morning.
So, I mean, the issue with the CEQA is that was one of the large linchpins of the lawsuit in Los Angeles on road diets.
Okay,
was failure to comply with that.
Right, okay.
And here, we don't even have a statement that we're categorically exempt, so.
Right, I got that in the agenda report, yeah,
I think if that's added into the report, and we see that on,
right.
It's probably more important for council than us, because we're making a recommendation, not making a determination.
Right.
But I'd hate to see, it's easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And green paint, too.
Mel, would you agree with that approach?
That's fine, absolutely.
Thank you. Commissioner Blackwell.
Okay, thank you. So I won't touch on CEQA compliance. I think that's been touched enough at this point. But I'll throw in a little shout on green paint. I think at this point, I think a recommendation is definitely in order, that we start seriously considering that. And so let that be our recommendation to council, that be considered going forward on all projects. I think we all share a like objective there, goal. The Sharrows downhill at Monte Vista, excellent idea. I think any opportunity we have to mitigate potential danger should be taken. Not all cyclists know their rights. Not all cyclists know they can go out into the center. So we address that, and it's an easy one, and it's just paint. So I think that's a valid measure there. So staff's recommendation for alternative 2, I'm full support of. I'm open to option or alternative 1, further discussion. So maybe how would we handle that? Straw vote on our recommendation? Because we have three commissioners now that are kind of on board with alternative 1. So how do y'all want?
Well,
I can make a motion.
Are we just, do we need more discussion on the parking?
well, as long as we do a recommendation on a section, and the alternative, if an alternative doesn't get approved, we can vote on the other alternative.
Okay.
Very simple.
Okay, that's the way to do it.
Commissioner Rulon? Or were you done?
I'm all done, thank you.
Okay, yeah, this is a little discussion on that option 1. If I understand it, the encouragement for option 1 is you feel it would increase pedestrian use by providing more parking? Okay. I appreciate that, but I'm not sure I agree with the argument. It's usually when I see parking, it's sort of a build it and they will come sort of affair, and so people use the parking or they use the bandwidth, and it tends to encourage more vehicular use as opposed to pedestrian use. If parking starts to get a little crunched or is not as available, then it encourages other modes of transportation. So I'm not sure that, I see what you're going and I appreciate where you're going, but I'm not sure that option 1 is going to buy us that by getting more parking spaces.
I'd like to weigh in on it. When I first looked at the options, I was leaning towards option 1 as I read the staff report, knowing that DMV is down and the whole area is impacted. And, you know, Shore Cliffs had people parking everywhere, and we just did other issues, some other traffic calming issues in that area up there. But when I looked at the site today, I just didn't think the way that as you go up the slope, particularly beyond Vaquero there, as you start up the hill, and the way it necks down, I just thought it was a bridge too far. I didn't think that we would have compatible use of the parking and the bicycles and the normal speeding. It necked down to the point I said, where are we going to get 45 spots here? I just felt uncomfortable, and I drove that thing 3 times, and I went down and I parked, I found a parking spot on Vaquero and got out and walked up and down there and just kind of looked at it. And I'd really like to put parking there because I know the area needs parking. I just didn't think it was a safe fit. It's a tough call, but I just thought, kind of like Jim's thinking, if we park it, they will come. At the same token, I just didn't think we had enough separation there to support it. I thought 45 was just a little aggressive.
Okay, and I would comment on alternate 2 with the separation between the bicycle lane. When I drive that, right now it's 2 lanes going up. And the per guys pumping their bikes in low gear up on the pegs, they're not driving in a straight line. They're all over the place because it's a hard climb. And I think I would lean towards alternate 2 and err in the safety, for safety more than parking, because if we find it's not necessary, we can always put the parking in. But safety comes first. And
That's my view.
Brenda made a good point about that providing safety. Okay, let's see if we can put together a motion, a couple of motions. I guess it would be 3 motions. We're going to do first restriping of Mira Costa. We have we want to put together a motion to forward that to the City Council.
I make a motion that we forward to City Council a recommendation to approve the design concepts of restriping Camino Mira Costa as conceptually shown in attachment 2.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And that goes...
All opposed?
All opposed. I was going to make a quick comment that goes also with the caveat on the CEQA get squared away. Opposed, we have none, and we have one, so it's 5-0. 6-0, excuse me. And then let's do a motion on Camino Capistrano from Ave Vaquero to, let's see, that would go all the way up to
Delgado.
Yeah,
Delgado, thank you. So that, do we have a motion for that?
I will move that we recommend forwarding, that we forward to the city council a recommendation to approve the design concept for Vaquero to, what's the street word?
Delgado?
To Delgado.
Yes, Delgado.
Alternative 2 is proposed by staff.
All in favor?
I'll
We have a
second.
second?
I'll second.
John Brown seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I oppose.
Very good. And that goes, this time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for, 1 against, and 1 absent. Then let's get a motion for Camino Capistrano from Avenida Vaquero to Pacific Coast Highway.
I will move that we forward to the city council a recommendation to approve the design concept for Avenida Vaquero to PCH. Alternative 2 is proposed by staff.
I'll second.
Excuse me, with the added recommendation of Sharrows
Correct.
for the
That was-
downhill
That
side.
was actually for the prior one, and
That was
we'll
for-
consider that, yeah.
For the prior motion.
That was for the prior
shoot, I
motion
missed it.
segment.
Okay.
But we'll consider that for sure.
Since these are recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good, thank you.
So, do we have a vote on that one?
We have a motion and a second, I think.
And who seconded? Tally second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0.
Yeah.
And Tom, you're comfortable with
Green paint?
all the recommendations?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with all your motions, yeah. And the CEQA and the green paint.
Okay.
And we'll move forward with the green paint as appropriate.
That's not appropriate. Move forward, period.
Do we have any old business? We have none. We have reports from commissioners and staff. I'm going to jump in. I just want to congratulate Jim Rulon on chairing the design review, and Jason Talley sat in as our alternate, and he hit one that was right in his strong suit. So he did a very good job, and thank you very much. So,
And the subject was?
do we have any other reports?
Chick-fil-A.
Oh, my gosh.
So do we have any other commissioners or staff reports?
Yeah, I'd like to report that on Thursday, August 9, the first Coastal Advisory Committee meeting, because they canceled the meeting in July, and that is also the first meeting for the new committee. We elected Susan Ambrosi as a chair, or we re-elected her, and we also elected Joreen Campopiano as the vice chair. The committee also voted to move the meeting, move future meeting to City Council channel right here, to alleviate some parking issues they experienced. And also, the starting time will be 6:30 in the future.
So they're moving the location of the meeting to council chambers?
They move here
Yeah.
and start at 6:30. Currently, well, it started at 7, so they felt a little late. There were 2 presentations, one from Orange County Healthcare Agency about the sampling of water along the coast. And another one is by a non-profit organization called Heal the Bay, and they do some forecast for water quality. And the OSA Health Agency, they sample the water. It takes about 24 hours for them to get the results. So by the time we see those warning, it's late. So what the Heal the Bay does is they try to create a model computer model to forecast the water quality. And so far, they're doing quite well and looks promising. So in the future, it may be applied to our city. Currently, they're doing a pilot program in Oceanside as well as Dana Point. And then after that, we reviewed a environmental sustainability program application. And the city has $12,000 to spend every year on those programs. Anything related to water conservation, reduction of solid waste, encouraging recycling of materials, and improve water quality, and they qualify to apply. And this time we don't have a lot of applications, so we decided to fully fund a proposal from Marblehead Elementary School. They want to get some money to buy water bottle and then have the student to refill them, and that way they don't have to buy them bottled water. And we fully fund them with $2,000. And then another one is St. Clemente Earth Day events. We decided to fully fund them. Then a third one is from a nonprofit organization, I think it's called Park in St. Onofre. So because it's not directly related to St. Clemente, it's somewhat related. They focus on some work about educating dog owners to pick up their dog in state parks, like St. Clemente State Park. So we decided to fund them half of what they asked for, $1,000. The fourth one is about a physical improvement to install a xeriscape landscaping in a church. We felt that there's not enough information. We want to find out more information before we can support that. So that's my first reading.
Very good. And thank you for doing that.
And if I could, I just want to thank Brenda Miller for coming by. It's been a while since we've seen you. It's good to see you again, and thanks for giving us your expertise.
Where's Foxy?
Boys, thank you for your very thorough deliberation.
Your dog is so well behaved. I'm so impressed. Just so you know.
She is the fox. He's the bald fox.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Good to see you again, Brenda.
Okay, everyone.
Very good. And we're done with staff reports. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
I'd like to make a motion that Planning Commission adjourn to the next regular meeting of the study session, and the Planning Commission will be held at 6 p.m. on September 5th, 2018 in Council Chambers located at 100 Avenida Presidio, San Clemente, California.
Second.
Second by Don Brown. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes 6-0. Eileen, do I give these to you?